Oh my god. The ironic irony pulling into the Trump case of details being revealed. Alright. There was a subpoena sent to a guy named Jeremy Rosenberg, alright? Here's the thing though. Not the Jeremy Rosenberg that has anything to do with the case, just some random person named Jeremy Rosenberg, who has nothing to do with it. Literally. And by the way, when it comes down to society, the words that have been tainted is you got the wrong guy. All right. Now keep in mind too, when you end up having the justice system involved in the situation, where the amount of times that the immediate knee-jerk reaction that law enforcement ends up going ahead and getting, or lawyers, ends up being, the famous last words, you got the wrong guy. So then for somebody to go ahead and put a comment named Four Seasons long, total lawn care, to go and say, now you know how we feel, Jeremy Rosenberg, because of the mix up in the Rudy Giuliani, public, you know, speech that was what was supposed to be assumed to be booked at a Four Seasons hotel, and it ends up actually being that they ended up booking for the Four Seasons total lawn care parking lot. Oh, is anybody else spectating and like watching from the sidelines, thinking like, how much how much more hilarious can it end up being that what ends up saving democracy would be Trump's legal team having to go ahead in front of the judge, who's the equivalent of the teacher, going ahead and saying, some dog ate my deposition, you know? Or my dog identified the wrong person. While at the same time going to have to meet the burden of going ahead and substantiating due diligence to be able to take claims as far as credits, for works done, and debt accrued, while meeting the standard of the Federal Debt Collection Act, that would end up going ahead and meeting the guidelines of the Consumer Affairs as far as proper representation, as well as, meeting the burden and threshold of being defrauded, due to the factor of being denied the opportunity, regardless of whether the error was human or machine. Ultimately ends up leaving to the Department of Justice. Yeah, we were ready to pursue it anyway, even though we learned we got the wrong guy. We're trying to do diligence to be able to fix the situation with as little public interference as possible, with how much public participation that the assumptions of this case being able to be broadcast nationally ends up going ahead and adding, the increased risk of, people trying to sway the jury, attempting to go ahead and unmask, statements that go ahead and play in, as well as, the substantiated point in time, backed up with metadata, by a forensic analyst to go ahead and prove that there was no steps to discovery, through the discovery process in the deliberation, with any potential cross coordination, without the potential of the tortious interference going ahead and running afoul of the law as a whole, and an individual's constitutional rights. I mean, sounds like the justice system is in a little bit of a corner that they got painted into, or painted themselves into, by, not wanting to have full transparency on a federal level with the entirety of society, while at the same time not explaining who are the people that are set to be the deliberators on what could potentially end up being dissemination of the facts, or debate, based on personal perspective, while at the same time going ahead and not denying somebody the presumption of guilt, the presumption of innocence, as well as leaving the burden of proof on the appropriate party. That's, one of the issue delegated on in a judicial and legislative manner. Hey, no one ever said learning this stuff was going to be fun and exciting and all, you know, night at the museum or, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego or any type of propaganda or anything. For anybody that's taken the time to go ahead and step by step learn the bureaucratic process and the way that all of them coincide, for the purpose of trying to preserve justice and preserve truth, and ultimately, the threshold meant to go ahead and, be able to establish a tort or a claim as well as the timeline. No one ever said learning that would ever be fun. Now, when it comes to universal application, ask me if it would be useful for anyone and everyone. Absolutely. What's some examples of people that have, been a living example of that? People that have been wrongly convicted or wrongly accused of a crime, while simultaneously the manipulator is the one attempting to taint the well. If you haven't experienced it, if you haven't worked with any form of federal agency or governing body to go ahead and understand the reason for the separations and the framework that there is, you don't need to imagine how cataclysmic that not being in place would be. And some of those protections are within, the HIPAA Act as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, understand, othering disabled community and understanding the damages that, for example, that type of situation, while somebody is trying to weaponize the legal system to use ableist rhetoric while trying to deny culpability of pleading ignorance. That's dangerous. That's going ahead and saying that, a doctor is allowed to say, I never said I wouldn't treat you. I just said I was going to go ahead and make you wait your turn. But I'm not going to go ahead and show you how long the query is and exactly if you're at risk of perishing with your disabilities and debilitation in the process. But at the same time, in that aspect, I have no legal culpability because I'm paying attention to these other folks. What gives you the right to go ahead and complain the factor of how long you've been waiting? Oh, you've been waiting years? Oh, you want to go ahead and substantiate the claim against not only the doctor, but the hospital of the Hippocratic Oath that I took to do no harm while simultaneously trying to make excuses for medical malfeasance and medical neglect, and why exceptions to the legal allowance of allowing this to be done to one individual while trying to avoid the culpability of acknowledging the discriminatory manner and fashion in which it's handled. This is the dangers of using the legal system as a weapon. There is blowback. Just because you don't see what harm it could do, just because you don't see the amount of irreparable damage that it could make, does not mean that there isn't any.